I know it's late, but if you saw my message, you know that I couldn't be here earlier. Life happens. And I wanted to make sure that I talk to you about, what it feels like when everything starts to feel urgent. Because I think that's such an important conversation to have right now. And I wanted to be here with you, if that makes sense, right? So, um, there are seasons when things feel urgent. And even like now, life happened today and I couldn't be with you. And so I'm wide awake now. So I said, why not talk to you now about this? And so those seasons when everything feels urgent is not happening just at your work. A lot of times we think, oh, it's because of work and maybe that, and that's not it. And it's not just in one area of your life. Usually, when you have that urgency, it's almost in every area of your life, and everything feels like it needs your attention now. And look, if you feel that way, raise your hand and let me know. But even small things, the smallest thing can feel like it's just yelling at you that it needs your attention. And it's not because anything is really urgent. All the times, a lot of those times is what I'm saying. That urgency is not real, or it's not what it started looking out that it was. And nothing has obviously changed a lot of times for you. It's not like this big change that happened, but what it is that, well, I'll tell you in a minute. The thing is, it's not a big crisis usually, and usually you're having those same responsibilities, but something feels different and you're wondering, why do I feel like everything needs to be taken care of now? Or why am I pushing myself to take care of everything now? But life seems the same on the outside, right? But yet you're doing this. So there's usually a reason behind this. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to spill the beans. It's usually that you don't have any space to think. And I know when I said that, it was like, you're right. Because when we don't have that space to strength to think, when there's no pause between one thing to the next, when things just keep compiling on each other and keep compounding on each other, and you have to do this, your own thoughts don't get room. And you're reacting more than you're thinking at that point, right? Because that's all you have the bandwidth and the ability to do at that time is just react. What needs to be done? What do I need to take care of? Because I know in a second something else is going to come up and I'm going to have to deal with that too. Everything feels compressed, and you feel it in how your mind is working. Trouble, you have trouble finishing sentences. You see, I just couldn't finish my sentence. But you have trouble in finishing your sentences. How many of you have done that? I do that a lot. And what's happening, if you really think about it, Little House on the Prairie days, all those days before, we never, or they never, I wasn't in Little House on the Prairie days, but back then they didn't have the computers and all the neighbors and all the things that are screaming for our attention that we have now. If it's not TV, it's social media, it's family, it's work, it's it's activities, it's community, it's church, and everything wants a piece of you. And when that happens, it reminds me of my computer. I always say, when I'm working on my computer, have you ever worked on your computer and you hear the mouse and you're trying to work on this thing and then you're trying to work on that thing? See, I just turned to my other monitor and saw me. I was like, woo. But anyway, when you're working, just like I squirreled for a minute, your computer is asking you, all of a sudden it freezes, right? So your computer is asking you, what do you want me to do? What I'm not sure. You just click this and then you click that. Which one of these things do you want me to do? And that is what your brain is doing. Your brain is like, what thought do you want me to hold on to? What activity do you want me to do? And it doesn't have time to think. And that's why it's so important that we do pause to think. And so when we don't, what happens is losing your train of thought in the middle of a sentence, is words that don't come as easily. You think you can't remember someone's name, or and it's not that you don't know who they are, it's just that word for their name doesn't come to you right now, or there's a word that you're trying to use to describe what you want to say, and it's just, you know, the word, you can almost see the word, but your brain isn't pulling it forth because it's probably thinking about the next thing that you have to do. That's what happens. And so you hesitate more than you used to. You're still functioning, you're still doing things, but somehow it doesn't feel the same. You're doing what needs to be done, right? You're showing up, but it feels more of a weight than it used to in the past. You feel like things are happening slower for you or less fluid. They're not flowing the way they used to. And what this does, I know, is it creates a fear, especially in these times when Alzheimer and dementia and other memory things are really prevalent now, and you see it on TV. You see them talking about this supplement or this pill to make sure that your memory is still sharp, and then so you start questioning. And believe me, I'm gonna say this right up front: if you feel that is something that is needs attention, please go talk to your doctor. Go talk to someone, a therapist, because that will set your mind at ease. But a lot of times, for a lot of us, it's because we're trying to hold too much. We're trying to hold in our brain everything that needs to be done, not only for ourselves, but for others. Everyone who's in our life, everyone who's close to us, everyone that we care about. We're trying to take care of everything they have to do, even if they didn't ask, and things that we have to do. And so our brain is firing like our computer all over the place. And sometimes it just stalls. But then that fear comes up that I was talking about, that fear of, well, if that's going to happen, what if I'm in the middle of a presentation and all of a sudden I can't think of a word, or I forget where I am, or I can't I can't afford to do that. I can't afford to be in a position where I'm standing before people, where I'm giving a speech, or I'm doing this or I'm doing that, and I'm not at my top, and I'm not as fluid as I used to be. And so you ask yourself questions like, why can't I think like I normally do or like I used to? What's going on? Why does everything feel harder? Why am I fighting to hold on to these things? Or the most simplest, what's wrong with me? What's going on? And when you can't explain it, when you have no answer for it, it's scarier and it makes it worse. You don't have the language for what's going on yet, so you don't talk about it. Who wants someone else to know that they're losing it, or they're not as sharp, or not as good as they used to be? So what do? We push through. We just push through as we always do, and we assume this too shall pass. But this time, pushing through isn't fixing it. Speed isn't returning. Urgency keeps building, and you don't know why. So, what's actually happening here? And I think that's so important that we understand what's actually happening when our thinking starts to feel crowded. It isn't a lack of capability at all. You don't lose, or you didn't lose your intelligence, and you didn't forget how to think. You're still competent. I want you to know that. It's interruption before your mind can register what you were on already. One thing pulls you away from another. Before before a thought can actually sit there, something else needs your attention. And you never get to sit with that thought. You never get to fully process that thought. You're asking yourself to switch instantly over and over again. And I don't know if you know or heard me say it before, that fallacy that we believe is multitasking, it's task switching. That's what really is happening. You're switching from one task to the other. And do you realize that when you do that, you lose, if I'm not mistaken, it's like 15 minutes, because it takes that amount of time for your brain to fully leave this task and move to the next. You ever be working on a task and working on something, and something pulls your attention away, and you find out that it actually takes you longer to get that focus than if you would have just stayed with that one task and focused on it. So what happens is your brain is never finishing that thought. You start something, you get interrupted, you come back, but that thread of thought is gone. And constant switching actually creates that urgency for you. Everything feels unfinished. Everything feels like it's pending, and nothing feels, well, settled. So everything feels like it needs your attention now. And I'm going to tell you why. What a lot of us do, um, is when you feel something's urgent, you feel that if I finished it, I need to finish it. I need to hurry up and do this before I forget it. Okay, is that you? Because I know it's me a lot of times. And what happens is that urgency becomes how you measure yourself, how fast you get it done. If I handle this fast, I'll be okay, right? If I hesitate, something's wrong. I'm not on my game. I'm not that girl anymore. And so speed feels like your competency. Speed feels like that's how you gauge whether you're still on, and pausing, stopping, taking that moment, those few seconds feel risky. So you stop giving yourself that space. That is so important. You answer immediately, right? Because I know my stuff. And if I talk, if someone asks me a question, I know it. I'm quick. I got my game on, right? So you answer immediately, or you decide quickly. Not always a good thing. And you keep moving, right? Because slowing down, it feels unsafe. And that's why things get harder. Not because you can't think, but because there's no room for anything or for thinking actually to happen. Thinking, I want you to hear this. So I'm going to say this. Do I have your attention? Thinking requires space. And space in our lives nowadays, space in the world that we live in, is the first thing to go. And here's the cost of not allowing yourself to have that space. So you're always responding, right? So this urgency, what it does is it changes how you move through your day. You're rarely choosing, you're reacting. Your day decides for you instead of you deciding for your day. And so you stop finishing things cleanly, fighting with my glasses today. You move on before things are complete. And mentally, for you, things stay open because you weren't able to close that door. And so, what you're doing now is you're carrying a lot of loose ends, things that never connect, things that never close. Nothing fully settles. Even me saying that, how does that make you feel inside? What anxiety rises up for you because it's not finished? Decisions get made faster, but not clearer. You decide to relieve that pressure. That's why you made that decision, not because it's the best choice. You haven't had the time to think it through, right? But because it ends that moment of anxiety for you, so you just come up. It's like when your kid asks you something, Mom, 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 can I have this? And you're working on a paper or you're taking a test or whatever it is you're doing. Mom, Mom, can I have this? Yes, yes, go ahead. Why? We just want it to stop. And we'll deal with the consequences later. Sometimes we don't even know what they asked for. And we deal with the consequences later, right? Your attention becomes fragmented. You're pulled in multiple directions, even when you're doing just one thing, because your mind is still anticipating what the next thing is going to come that's going to interrupt you. So your mind stays split. Do you know what I'm talking about? Everything starts to feel equally important. There's no hierarchy. There's no prioritization. You have this list, and everything on that list feels like it needs to be done. Instead of you saying, this is what needs to be done today or now. This is something someone else can do. It doesn't matter. Everything feels urgent, even when it's not, right? And that makes our thinking even harder. Not because we can't think. Of course we can think. That's what we're good at, right? But because nothing slows down enough for you to give that thinking the attention that it needs. You're always mid transition. So you rely more on your action than your intention, and you answer because it's there. And over time, that urgency becomes normal. That's just the way it is. How many times have you said that? That's just the way it is. I'll just have to deal with it now. That's just the way we handle things. I've got to do it. And you even stop noticing it. You assume that that's how life works until you're exhausted by it. So, where does relief come from if pushing harder isn't the answer? Relief doesn't come from getting everything done. Not at all. And I forgot to look, I'm so into talking to you. I just want to talk to you that I didn't see the chat. And if you've said something, I will answer you. But relief doesn't come from getting everything done. You've tried that. The list never ends. I to show you a list right now. Finishing one thing just reveals one thing else, another thing that needs to be done and feels just as important. And urgency refills itself. Isn't that how it feels? And it doesn't come from leaving your life or ghosting your life. You can't always take a vacation. And you know what? Even if you could, vacation isn't going to fix it. You can't step away from your responsibilities. Oh, how we wish we could sometimes. And you can't pause everything like the Matrix, right? That makes relief feels impossible, unreachable. But relief comes from when you start creating that space inside of what you're already doing. Doing things like pause, stopping, breathing. Just take a second before responding. Just taking a moment to register what was said, what was asked, before you make a decision. It's actually giving that time to let a thought finish for you instead of, where was I? What was I just thinking of? Let that thought finish before you pick up another and give your mind room to breathe. Urgency feeds on speed. Space slows that internal pace. Not everything, not everything needs an immediate answer. And when you start stopping or start stopping giving that immediate answer, you realize that not every demand needs to become yours. Their emergency or their urgency doesn't constitute an emergency on your space and in your time. And I forgot how that saying really goes. And if you remember it, let me know. Um, I just couldn't think of it right then. But when you give yourself that space, and when that space returns, that thinking returns. You don't feel as rushed. Yay. You don't feel as pressured. Not at all. And your mind starts to organize again. What a what a wonderful feeling. I am like totally, totally the organization structure type person. So when my mind is all over the place and when I pause and get that time to organize my thoughts, that's like heaven. Because in that time, you can see what matters and what doesn't. And that changes how urgency shows up in your life. Fewer things feel critical for you anymore. Decisions feel steadier and you respond. I mean, you respond, yes, instead of react. You're just responding to what's going on. You're no longer reacting. Do you get the difference between the two? You don't feel pulled in every direction. And who doesn't want that? This isn't about doing less. Don't get me wrong. It's about doing with space. It's about letting your system breathe and giving your mind room to work. Interrupting before your life overwhelms you and that overwhelm builds. This is the beginning of relief. It's not an escape, not a vacation. It's not collapse. It's not burnout. It's just space. space. That's what I want you to give yourself. Space. Enough to think again. And that's the part that I don't want you to miss, because this is where things start to shift. This is the kind of interruption that I talk about inside the Undivided. It's not about adding more to your life, but learning how to interrupt the chaos in it. It's just learning how to create space before anything turns urgent. But before you do anything else this week, the rest of the week that we have, I want you to feel what I'm talking about. Just once this week, before the weekend is over, before you answer, before you decide something, before you explain, create a pause, just a breath. I remember how they used to tell us count to 10. I'm not asking you to count to 10. I'm asking you to give yourself a few seconds to pause, to allow the thought to finish. And notice what happens when you didn't rush yourself. Felt good, didn't it? And if you want, I want you to come back here and tell me how you felt. I would love to know. Until next time, I want you to take care. Go ahead, take that pause one time, just once, sometime during the rest of the week. Take care. Bye bye.